Thank you for joining us on our special coverage of the Seoul-Tokyo summit. South Korean President Yoon and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida will have second face-to-face today after Tokyo summit back in March. This marks the official resumption of the long-halted reciprocal visits between the two nations as they seek to build momentum in mending bilateral ties. For more, we go straight over to our presidential office correspondent Soo-young. Soo-young, has Kishida arrived yet?
Hi, Kyung-eun. Yes, he has. We just saw him land at Seoul Airport and he stepped off the plane and got into a car, and he's now speeding towards his first commitment here in Seoul, paying his respects at Seoul National Cemetery, where people who died in the Korean War and also independent activists who resisted against Japan's brutal colonisation lie at rest. And the cemetery is just across the bridge from where Kishida will be holding the summit here at the presidential office in Yongsan. President Yoon is going to greet him with an official welcoming ceremony, and the two leaders will then hold their summit talks, which will consist of a small group session attended by just a few high-level officials, then an expanded meeting. The key agenda items are expected to be national security amid growing nuclear and missile threats from North Korea, along with issues of common interest such as supply chain resiliency, high-tech industries, science and technology, as well as youth and cultural cooperation. Now, Yoon and Kishida are expected to announce more specific plans for building new relations in these key areas. A more controversial issue, however, may be Tokyo's plan to discharge treated radioactive wastewater from the Fukushima nuclear power plant in Japan. The question of the safety and efficacy of the treatment method, as well as the credibility of Tokyo Electric Power Company's reporting, has been seriously concerning for neighbouring countries, including South Korea, not to mention marine biologists, environmentalists, as well as Japanese fishermen. Now, according to multiple diplomatic sources, Seoul is pushing for a joint safety inspection separate from the ongoing probe by the International Atomic Energy Agency. The agenda, though, hasn't been set in stone, but a senior presidential official here has said that there's no need to exclude the topic if South Koreans and the media are strongly concerned about the matter. Of course, as much as the two leaders are very keen on advancing their ties and cooperation in key strategic areas, historical issues remain due to domestic political sensitivities on both sides. And that said, the chances of a joint declaration after the summit are rather slim. And it seems that the two men are going to announce their respective positions as they did in Tokyo about 52 days ago.
Right, with Kishida's visit, are the reciprocal visits between the two nations now officially restored?
Right, yes. The top-level exchanges between the two leaders, between both sides, are now in full swing after 12 years. And, well, of course, the two leaders like to call this shuttle diplomacy, which has a slightly different meaning in the English language, but all the same, the shuttling back and forth between Seoul and Tokyo, now that's very meaningful, and it really signifies the remarkable improvement in bilateral ties that would have been very much unimaginable during the previous Moon and Abe governments, when relations between the two countries spiraled into a severe trade and diplomatic spat over historical disputes. There's been huge progress already after the Yoon administration took steps to compensate Korean victims of Imperial Japan's forced labour mobilization. They requested voluntary donations from the private sector instead of demanding Japanese firms pay up, which is what the court under the previous Moon government did. Of course, this has upset some civic groups in South Korea. The president's resolute position on closing the chapter on history has triggered a rather emotional response among the Korean public, even as they acknowledge the need to move forward for improved ties with Japan. Now, Prime Minister Kishida has clearly appreciated this rather big political sacrifice that President Yoon has been willing to make, and Kishida conveyed that his visit would be a response to Yoon's courageous move. Now, we'll have to see how the leaders get on today after their summit and dinner, which will be followed by a more private setting where they will have more personal one-on-one talks.
All right, so thank you for the reporting.